So, Jessica, I originally met you. I was at a mastermind in a cabin in the woods, and you were on a TV screen. It was with Veronica Romney, and I just absolutely loved everything that you were talking about and the caliber and next level conversations that you were having. So I was like, I need to talk to Jessica. So I'm excited to have you here on the Emotionally Uncomfortable podcast.
I'm excited to be here. And it's always, I don't do a lot of virtual stuff when I speak. I'm normally in person and in the rooms. And so that one was a little difficult where I couldn't really just sit down with all of you and strategize. So I'm excited that we get to continue the conversation today.
Well, you never know too, right? You're like talking to a screen and you can't see the people, or you're like, what are people like? You're not getting that like feedback of what's going on in the conversation. And it's kind of an interesting take on like podcasting, right? Because we just never know where our stories go or the impact we're making with sharing, like using our voice and sharing our life experience. But one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because I know you're a mother. You have an interesting career background, and on Emotionally Uncomfortable I often talk about like how do you want to feel and reverse engineering that. And I think there's a lot of belief and story that we've told ourselves of like why we can't go after what we want, or why we can't be the quote unquote mother that we want for our children. And I just truly, truly believe a more well-resourced woman is what this world needs, both at home and of course in the bigger impact. There was two things that you said. I was like, what do you want to take a stand for? What do you do in your work? And you were like, owner dependencies, really supporting with the owner dependency and helping owners of companies like buy back their time and energy. But also when you have the resources, you can you can literally put that into your family. So really having this conversation about buying back our time and our energy and becoming more financially well-resourced as women. So, yeah, I want to hear a little bit more about your story, like what got you to where you are today and how getting you there has also kind of set you up for the children that you were gifted.
Yes. So who I am today is completely different than who I was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. And a lot of it is due to life experience, and a lot of it is due to the investments that I've made to be a different person and to really get the knowledge and wherewithal of how emotions work and why do they work, and healing trauma from a child. So I didn't have the best childhood, and because of that, when I graduated college I was determined to just fly. and and I did. And I was originally in commercial real estate. Then I got approached into an opportunity for a startup in 2009 in the healthcare industry. Flash forward to 2015, I was a healthcare executive. It went through a multi-billion-dollar acquisition. I stayed on for 2 additional years. But what people don't see or hear when they read that story is that I spent my 20s and early 30s working at least 100 hours a week. I had zero clue what a boundary was. Everything was poured into the work and growing this company and growing my role individually, right? Climbing that next rung on the ladder to get to the top. And it wasn't until I couldn't get pregnant. I was extremely exhausted. I was traveling all over the United States. I was overseeing a sales division of 500 plus sales reps, plus our internal commercial operations. I mean, it was just very demanding. And when you're in it, you realize it. You know you're tired. You know you're missing out on trips, or you're missing out on, what your friends are doing at that age because they're getting married and they're having babies. But you justify it because the money's so good. The title is so great. This is what you're supposed to do, right? This is what success is. And I think that there was a very tough conversation I had with one of the world's top executive coaches, where he came in and he sat in my office and he said, "Where do you want to be 5 years from now?" And I looked at him with complete exhaustion on my face and I said, I don't even know where I want to be 5 fucking minutes from now. Like, I can't even think that far ahead. And he's like, "Okay, 5 months from now." I'm like, No clue." Like, I am just trying to get through today, put out the fires, get the numbers up. Like, there was so much going on. I couldn't even think that way. And it started to eat me alive that I couldn't picture anything other than what was happening in the moment and what was happening for the company. Like, I had nothing outside of that. No hobby, no nothing. So when I finally got pregnant after 6 rounds of IVF and I knew my contract was coming to an end, that's when I decided I have 2 options. I can keep doing what I'm doing and I can never be there for my kids. I can take a chief sales officer role within another company and this is going to be my life, or I can learn to be satisfied with what I've done and build something new for where I want to go. And that was honestly the turning point for me, when my kids were in the NICU. And I just thought, I don't think I could ever go back. And so since then, I launched a firm when my twins were 6 months old, and we have grown and scaled. We have multiple companies. I also own a very successful construction company with my husband. I have a media group. I invest. I'm able to also do a lot of philanthropic work, but I do all of that now in a completely different way and harmoniously than I ever did when I was a corporate executive.
There was something that you were talking about that I want to like dive into a little bit deeper about like when you were asked that question and you're like, I don't know, like I can't think past this moment, right? There's so much mental capacity where people get stuck. They're like, I don't have extra. And I'm like, but isn't that the point? Like when we have extra time, energy, financial resource, we can think bigger. We can think next level. We can scale companies, scale businesses, but also scale ourselves, scale our lives and who we want to be. Do you remember, like, yes, making that choice, like your children kind of forced you to make that choice, like stop and think about your future, but do you remember the transition of kind of getting your brain back, per se, getting that capacity back to think differently?
I do. So I actually hired somebody. Her name was Eileen. She was phenomenal. And I brought her into my life, at a very high investment, not just from a monetary value, but the commitment that I was going to give her and the time and releasing, quite honestly, the bullshit that I believed, because I believed that that was success. I believed that if I was the hardest working executive, or that if I was always available to my team or clients or whatever that may have been, that that's how I placed value on, honestly, me as a human. And so I really had to go in and figure out, why do I think that? I had to realize that there's other people that don't think that whatsoever. They find their value in motherhood or in, their hobbies or whatever it may be. And so I just, as you assume that everybody operates and functions like you do, and then you realize pretty quickly when you go through an immersive process like this, like, no, that's a belief that somewhere along the line you picked up and you implemented it and somebody rewarded it, and so you just kept going with it. And so you have to unwire all of that, and it's a lot of work. But because I did that work and because I wanted so badly to be a mom, and I also had just gone through an experience where I was surrounded by top executives who were never with their families, who were traveling nonstop, didn't know what was going on in their kids' life. That was also a big driver for me of, I don't want that. I don't want to be like that. And if I'm starting a company, I don't want my team to feel that way. And so I really had to, because healthcare versus a firm are very different. Healthcare is very fast paced and there are a lot of regulations and things happening. So when I built the firm and when we built our companies, it was, there is this line and we are not going to cross it. There are these boundaries that we are going to have in place and we are going to structure the business around that. And I'll never forget, Eileen had said to me, Do you want your kids to hate entrepreneurship, or do you want them to value entrepreneurship? Because every single day, you and Garrett, my husband, you're getting up and you're setting the tone of what they think it is to own and operate a business. And you have the opportunity to display that to them in whatever format it is that you want them to experience it. And so our kids do see us work. Our kids do know that we have to take phone calls every now and then, but they also very much so see the rewards, and they see that I'm at drop off every day, and I'm at pickup, and I'm at the Valentine's party, and I'm at volunteering, and we go on vacations, and we explain to them that we're able to do this. I'm able to be there because I make those decisions of what goes on my calendar and what I'm willing and not willing to do as a business owner.
Love it. I actually like started my career as a social worker. So there's like this poverty, give, 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 give mindset. But I grew up with an entrepreneurial father and grandfather. Um, and I remember being like, not this. If I ever own a business, like this is what I thought business ownership was, that it was your whole life and it was a family business. And I remember being absolutely scared when I became a business owner. And it just goes back to, yes, we have to rewire. Yes, we have to like do the inner work, but what do I want? What do I want something to look like? Like taking that idea and putting it into reality. And like you said, having boundaries and then reverse engineering that and putting that in place. One of the conversations we had before I hit record was a huge thing that I talk about is parenting and relationships, because that's often a big catalyst for a lot of the women that I work with. And I believe our children like walk us back home to ourselves because they really force us. Typically, we start and we think, oh, we got to do this for them. We got to do this for them. And then eventually on the journey, someone's like, well, do you know how to do that? Do you do that? So I'm curious your relationship to that, like what your children have taught you about yourself to allow you, because it sounds like who you were before, yes, mothering in general, but we were talking about being well resourced and having the time and energy to give back. So a little bit about your son's journey.
Yes. So I think being a mom has drastically changed who I am on a multitude of levels, but I had a unique experience that I had boy girl twins born a minute apart. And I can remember so many people want to give you parenting advice. So many people. They all want to chime in. And I always tell new moms, I had kids within a minute of each other. What one likes, one didn't like. One liked to swing, one hated the swing. One slept like this, the other one's like, just because you're the mom, you can try to say you're going to have all this structure, you're going to do things an exact way, but what works for one kid is not going to work for the other. And so allowing them and being open to what is it that they actually need, or what is it that is actually working and working right now. It's not maybe necessarily going to be a forever thing. So we realized very early on, I would say at like 6 months old, that something was off with our son. And we went to multiple appointments, and they kept telling us, they're twins, you're comparing them. He's a boy, she's a girl. You know, he's fine. And so we went through this, and then COVID hit, which delayed a lot of things. And things progressively were getting worse. He was nonverbal. We could just tell. And so we finally decided, you know what, we may need to go an alternative route here. Like, we're not going to continue going back to the pediatricians to hear the pediatrician. I mean, the my chart was crazy of all the appointments I went, and then they just sent me home. So sure enough, we hired a private physician that just does diagnosing. She's phenomenal. And basically out of 0 to 3.0, he came back 2.8 on this on the scale for autism. Now, most people would hear that diagnosis and just be devastated. For my husband and I, it was like this huge sense of relief of like, we've known that something is not right? Now we have the information. What can we do? Because of entrepreneurship, because of being business owners, because of having the wealth that the company generates, we were steadfast in our decision that we would go 100% cash pay at that point. I would do, I would spend hours researching everything from diets to detoxes to heavy metals to anything and everything that we could possibly do. ABA therapists coming to our house. This was COVID. Nobody wanted to come. Um, and I was able to go on this journey with him, and now he's 7. We have him on this phenomenal modality called plasmalogen therapy, which is night and day. He is fully verbal. I was able to homeschool him until I felt like he was ready to be in the school system. Now he's still in RSP and some special ed and has an aide and all the things that he needs to support him. But through him, I learned emotional regulation, which I had never even heard of in my life. I've heard of stay calm, don't panic, try not to yell, you know. And when you have a child that is severely autistic, he also has sensory processing and OCD. So you can imagine there were a lot of days where I wanted to just curl in a ball and cry, but I had to keep reminding myself, he may not be calm, but I need to be calm. And how can I be so calm that he sees that and he can regulate down? And we were going through spurts of sometimes 2 hours of what looked like a temper tantrum or a severe meltdown. And if you've ever been around that for 2 hours, you want to lose your mind. I mean, internally, I was losing my mind, but I had to sit there and just be quiet. And sometimes I would just sit there and say nothing. And I would just wait and keep him safe. And when he was ready, he would crawl in my lap and he'd break down crying. And he knows I am his safe place. He knows I am always going to be his calm. I am always going to be the voice of reason. And even now, we have such really cool conversations that he's able to explain to me what he feels on a level that most 7 year olds could never explain that type of emotion.
It's very interesting to watch and observe when you're like in it, right? You're in the season and you're like, this is never going to change. It's never going to change. It was like an investment, like anything else. That is the compound effect of time. And it's so beautiful when you see that years later and you're like, oh my gosh, it's like water on a rock. Like learning those skills within ourselves, but they bring us to those moments. Like there's no back door. Like they put the mirror up on you because you will do anything for your kids. You're always going to be like, I will move the mountains. What's that saying of, I would die for my kids. And I'm like, but and they say, but would you live for them?
Yeah.
Because that to me was a huge part of my journey of like, would I live for them? And I didn't know what living looked like. I didn't know what aliveness was. They were just triggering the shit out of me. And I was so reactive. And then it was like you said, don't react. So then you suppress, you hold it in. But it's like when you learn the skill of emotional intelligence and emotional regulation, you are becoming the adult that you want your children to become, regardless of diagnosis, regardless of labels and titles. Like this human being is showing you who they need you to be. And when you become that, it's not for the faint of heart. It's not a fun, it's emotionally uncomfortable journey. But it gets you, yeah, it catapults you into this next level of yourself.
It really does. And then I have a daughter who's polar opposite. She's my mini me in looks. But what's super interesting is I had a childhood where I had to grow up really quickly and I was the adult. And with her, she is even at 7 years old, it's like the cloud looks like a unicorn and look at the rainbow and notice the birds. And like she's just kind of like she's so imaginative and she's all over the place and so carefree. And sometimes I'm like, are you paying attention? Are you focused? Like I was catching myself being like, Peyton, focus. I need you to focus. And then I started to catch myself and I thought, this is I need to let her be this way because so many kids can't be this way. They are under so much stress. This shows me that she has not a care in the world. She's not stressed on what's happening at home, or, there's no toxicity. She's sees sometimes her brother melting down and she just stays calm and happy, and so she's teaching me. He's taught me emotional regulation, and she's taught me that that's what childhood should look like. Like, we should
Mm,
be allowed to be carefree. We should be allowed to pause or just sit there and look at the clouds or look at the ocean or all the things that, like, with me, my mind's always racing and I'm on to the next thing. And so I agree, like, we can learn so much from them, but we also have to really let them be who they are.
yes, I've done that to my kids many times where I'm like, at your age, this is what I was doing. And it's like, oh, that it actually really reflects back to you how much shit you've gone through as a child when you're, or, when parents project, they're like, there's other kids that don't have a meal, eat all your food and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, but they don't know anything else. And because you became this type of person, you were able to break that pattern and they don't have that opportunity. And so it is okay to be like, that is me projecting my stuff again, that they can look at the clouds, that they can be playful. They have a way of returning us back home to ourselves if we're willing to look at it.
They do.
While I have you, I definitely want to like translate into like how this has challenged you to buy back time and energy in your companies as well, because we know people, overdo, overgive, overwork, workaholism, all of those things. But I do want to ask you, when it comes to your son specifically, and you're doing all of this research, what
Yeah.
types of therapies have you tried that are not mainstream, that if somebody's listening and they're like, I've never heard of that before, now I need to go and research it? um yeah, what have you found? Because there's a few things that I teach people, but I'm always like, your child's behavior is a language, and doing mindful breathing is not going to, like, yes, we need to understand emotional regulation, but there are biological things that are going on as well, and there's a whole other world out there that can lead you back home. And so talking about the problem is not always going to support the problem. So any wisdom you want to give women parents who are already seeking these things on the internet?
Yes. So I've tried anything and everything, and I've researched it all. I mean, when I tell you I've tried it all, I have tried it all. We luckily were introduced to this Dr. Goodenow through a family friend who went through his treatment for actually Alzheimer's. And he does this, it's all natural. You can go to prodromesciences.com. I am not an affiliate, I'm not sponsored. You need to obviously have a functional medicine doctor to help you. But I will say, we, in the last 4.5 years of, I mean, we've invested a lot and, and time and research and different therapies and modalities and all the things. He has this all natural plasmalogen therapy where it's like a really thick, think of like an olive oil. It's 100% all natural. It has all the omegas, it has egg whites in it. When I tell you that we started my son on this a few months ago, and within a week, it was like everything lifted. His teacher said it best. You can see it in his eyes. He refused to pick up a pencil. He refused to try to read. I mean, we have really, really struggled, and can't go to recess. I mean, there's just all these things. In less than a month, he was writing. He was learning to read. He has not had one behavioral issue since then. I mean, I cannot say enough great things, and the fact that it's all natural really aligns with like where we want to be. Is he still on prescription medication for autism? Yes, that's the only way he could be a functioning human and actually leave our home. but our goal is that we can wean him off of that. So if you're listening to this and you want to DM me, feel free. I'm happy to share anything and everything. I'm very open about our journey with autism and what we've tried, but hands down, this is the one thing. And the case studies and the resources of, they have a 19-year-old girl who is completely nonverbal, who started this last year and is now talking. Um, Long story short, your brain is 90% fat, and kids with autism, individuals with autism, the brain is starving. It is missing fat. We did an actual test on Easton, and he only had 19%. And so this is helping the brain basically get those necessary omegas and fats that they need in order to reduce the chaos and really help them be able to focus and learn and retain that information.
And phys- what is the website again, or the types of
Drone.
type of
So it's
therapy?
PRODROME, sciences.com. Dr. Goodenow is the doctor that created this. It's for Alzheimer's, ALS, autism. I believe they're seeing a lot of great results with severe ADHD as well. And it's been everybody that knows our son just keeps saying, what what happened? Like, he sat at a restaurant the other night, never once got out of the chair, was very well behaved. I mean, it's just night and day. And so I wish more parents knew about this.
Mm-hmm. When you Number one, like there's so many things in that alone. Thinking outside the box, looking outside the box, like becoming resourced in the sense of having the financial capacity to reinvest, because obviously there's so many people that would not have the privilege or opportunity to do that. But even just understanding that there are other ways out there, and that we just need to think for ourselves. We need to say, I'm not going to settle for this belief, this way of being, that life needs to be this way. And I'm sure the journey to get here was definitely not easy, in the sense of like the let's try this, let's try this, let's try this, like just the grit and perseverance of not giving up.
Yes, and I will say, to kind of go back to the question you asked, I run multiple seven-figure companies right now. And I am not involved in the day-to-day operations of any of them. And I have a very structured schedule. I work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays in between drop offs and pickups. I have really solid leaders running my companies. And so if I need to be at appointments with him, I can be at appointments with him. If I need to do this research, I can do this research. Building these companies to where they are not owner dependent. And it's one of the reasons I am so incredibly passionate about helping other women and men do this, is because I don't want my clients to have a $12 million company and kids who don't have a mom that's
Yeah.
present. I don't want my clients to grow to 20 million but get divorced along the way because they've made the business the total priority. So we really focus on getting our clients into the CEO seat, but we also focus on high profitability, because that profitability in my companies is what has been a vessel for personal wealth that has allowed me to jump on these opportunities and make these decisions really easily for my son or for whoever, because I know that I have the ability to do so.
Yeah. When we have bigger purpose and meaning behind, catapulting us to buy back our time and energy, that is where the profit like comes into play, in the sense of, I'm assuming everybody got into business or entrepreneurship for the sake of freedom. And if we don't know how to cultivate that freedom mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, then you're just in another prison, and you may have like a large bank account, but you feel trapped in your life until you look in the mirror and say, not this. And utilizing the resources, the assets of time, energy, and financial resource to create a life that you actually are like, pinch me. This is so, I can't believe I created this.
Yeah.
Um, so, Jessica, where can people get more of you, dive deeper into these conversations, and anything you want to share if they're like, I need more of this in my life.
Yes. So I have a podcast called Millions Are Made. I'm getting ready to interview Heather on it. So you'll be able to hear her episode where I interview 7, 8, and 9 figure founders who have built companies, but also have been able to take those millions and have massive impact globally through their mission and their values and their impact, and even in their own families. So we share those stories and a ton of business advice. And then on Instagram, you can find me at the Jessica Marx, Marx, and feel free to DM me. I will always answer. I'll shoot you a voice message back. Happy to be a resource to any of your listeners.
Beautiful. It's always fascinating to me how the online space works, but even like these podcasting conversations, like so often when I'm talking to people, it is well, like women who've done the research will go to the ends for their kids, or just like a quick little passive comment that people make. That when we have the courage and we act on it, we send the message, we do the thing, we lean into it, it just, the trajectory is completely different. So thank you so much for being an open book, for sharing your wisdom, and showing up.
Thank you for having me.